If there is a hurricane bearing down on Phyllis and Alan's home, and they pray that it be diverted, God isn't likely to answer that prayer because they've got a neighbor on each side. And God will not answer a prayer for my good if it means evil to another person. We make choices. We live lives that are so interconnected with one another that sometimes we begin to wonder, what should we pray for? But God says, pray for the desires of your heart, and God will sort them out. But it would be against God's nature to answer a prayer for our good that would bring evil to someone else. We can pray for wisdom for folks to make good choices when we see the disasters that are coming from decisions that are not good. Sometimes it seems like it ought to be simple. You make good choices, good happens. You make poor choices, bad happens. But we all know it doesn't work that way. I recently lost a friend in an accident with a drunk driver. The friend made no poor choices that day about getting into her car to go pick up her kids. But somebody else did, and those poor choices impacted her life in taking it away. It impacted her family forever. Sometimes choices are made, we don't even know where they were made. Think about Hurricane Katrina and all the life that was lost. Hurricanes are something that happened because of the way the world was made. But the disaster was much greater than it needed to be because of decisions that were good for business someplace years and years ago that changed the direction of the canals and did away with some of the wetlands that kept the storm surges from coming. It's an evil that was increased by choices made that affect people for generation after generation. I can't see any way to disallow, to take away our ability to make choices and have nothing awful ever happen. We're just not good choice makers all the time. Partly because we don't have enough wisdom and vision to see what tomorrow will bring with the decision we make. So we're left with a God that I understand to be good, a God who makes good creation and evil still being in the world. God isn't stupid. God knows it works that way. So God set in motion a way of dealing with the evil as it comes. And through Jesus the Christ, we have in the world today the church, the body of Christ, still made up of people with choices who can make poor choices as well as good ones, and sometimes make good choices that turn out to have bad consequences. But there is a way, if we live by the example that Christ set, and by the grace that comes to us through the resurrection of Christ, there is a way of mitigating the evil that the world brings. The whole idea that we have the power to change something so that it could come out good all stems back to the fact that it doesn't matter what the situation is. We have a God who can bring something good from even the most dire of situations. Now, it may be that some folks will say, well, God brought that about so that you could learn something. No, God never brings evil into this world. Don't ever let anyone tell you that God brought something awful just so something good could come. God didn't kill my friends so that those children could learn independence growing up. A drunk driver killed my friends. It wasn't God. And that's something that we hear sometimes. People, in looking for a word to say, well, it's God's will. No, if we've got free will, you can't blame everything on God. That's just not the way it works. But guess what? God never allows us to go through the difficult things alone. God has promised us over and over and over again that God will never leave or forsake us. And God, through Jesus, made it absolutely, positively irrevocable, because through Christ, the Spirit of the living God dwells in us. And the grace of God makes forgiveness possible. Doesn't change consequences, but makes life possible. God has made us God's way of dealing with evil in the world. I shared with Scott and Christine this morning a song by, a couple of lines from a song by Jason Gray. The song is Every Act of Love, and you might look it up because it's a really amazing song, but the line goes like this. God put a million doors in the world for God's love to walk through. One of those doors is you. Is each one of us. We become the passageway for God's love to touch those around us. Even if those around us are already passageways for God's love to touch the world, God's love comes through us. God's love most often has human hands and human hearts. God's love and grace even allows revenge to be grace-filled. Now, the book of Romans would take us a lifetime to chew our way through. But at the end of chapter 12 is the most amazing of verses. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals of kindness on their heads. Even revenge becomes an act of love and grace if we are the doors through which God's love actually comes into the world. It's hard to be kind to the person that's hurt you. But God working through you makes that possible. And love will do away with the evil. There are two things I know for an absolute fact. One is that grace always wins, and the other is that love is greater than hate. There is no way for hate to exist in the midst of love. Doesn't answer the question of how evil can exist if God is good. But for me, recognizing who God is and how God put creation together, coupled with who Christ is and who Christ is in the people who are Christ's church, make it possible for there to be a way out from under the burden of having to live with the doubt that God is a good God. I doubt very much that this is the answer any one of you is looking for. But I'm hoping that because We've taken the time to at least look at some of the pieces of it. You've got some tools to look at it for yourself. I will print for next week some copies of my sermon if you want to look at some of the texts that I've used. I'll have Terry put it on the e-news so that you can open it as a Word document. So that if you want to begin a conversation, we can then spend some time chewing on this together and talking about the places where our hurts make it hard to accept a God who allowed such things to happen. Because that's usually what clouds our lives so much, is the hurt and the pain that help keep us from truly accepting the love and grace of God fully. So for this week ahead, I would suggest that you reread the parables from today. You might want to look up Jason Gray's song. But more than that, I trust that you would be prayerful about what, if anything, from today God meant as a word for you. And please, email me, text me, call me if you want further conversation, because I think this is one of those places where there is no final answer, at least not this side of heaven. But it's one of those questions that can help us grow closer to Christ in the midst of the questions. Amen? Right. If you would stand as you're able, we're going to try our closing hymn one more time. We've done this before. It's number 528 in your hymnal. But it's kind of confusing. So in your bulletin, you'll actually find the words written out without music with it. So hopefully that's easier to follow if you don't follow the music very well. So number 528, You Are the Seed.
Beacon to glow in
better that time. We'll have to try it again. Now that we're getting better at it, right? There we go. Yeah, you gotta be careful what you let Pastor Natalie do there, right? It's a lovely song, and the words were absolutely appropriate for the sermon today, so I had to have it. But now, as you prepare to go from this place, go in peace. Go knowing that our God is a God of love and grace. Go knowing that God has called each one of us to be a door for which God's love can pass.